All right, it's the off season. Time for some tier list. I'll definitely be making a good amount of these tier lists in the off season as they're a lot of fun to do. This is the how you should feel about the 2023 season tier list. So, 5 tiers: amazing, good, fine, bad, and oh god. You know how this works. If not, I'm sure you'll figure it out as we go. Tennessee Titans. I think this is I would probably say, like, bad, right? Like, it wasn't a great season. Will Levis maybe has showed flashes, so maybe you feel better about that. But Derrick Henry did not look as good as he typically looks. He was still good, but looks like he might be gone now. The Hopkins thing worked, but again, is he going to stick around? Not the ideal scenario for the Titans. Not a disaster, but not, and again, I'm not just evaluating how you were this season, but how you should feel about this season. So, like, for example, the Dolphins, I think they're in the fine tier. Maybe you could even argue worse than that. Maybe I will actually bring them down to bad because, like, on one hand, the players who are usually awesome for them were awesome, but, I don't know, maybe we were expecting a next step from Tua. He still was just a good quarterback. This year, he's a good quarterback, but that's kind of where he was at. And I think that the defense is why they're here. Like, the fact that Fangio is gone. Fangio was supposed to be this big offseason hire that's going to make them Super Bowl contenders, and it wasn't terrible. But, and especially with the pass rush was getting hurt, what are you supposed to do? But now he's gone, so it's like, well, okay, that didn't really work out. So yeah, they're closer to fine than oh god for sure. But I am going to bring them down. And then the Jets, again, so you could argue they're oh god because it was rough. At the same time, though, I kind of view it as like, well, Aaron Rodgers got injured. Like, what were you supposed to do? I think that I'm still going to put it in bad, though, because the rest of the offense also looked tough. So I still feel like, a lot of bad going on here, but that's kind of how I view them. The Cincinnati Bengals, I'm fine. Again, little different than the Jets because I think the Jets' other things underperformed. The Bengals seemed like the Bengals, and then Joe Burrow got hurt. So, I don't know. They started slow, as they always do, and then they looked great, and then, Burrow got hurt. So, I'm going to put it in the fine category. And the Browns, I'll say good. I'll say good for the Browns because, no, I can't say good. I'm going to put it in the fine tier because, the reason it's the quarterback thing, right? Deshaun Watson just doesn't look good. And, this year, I think the excuse last year was, well, he was rusty. Well, okay, why Joe Flacco should have been rusty, and he looked better in that situation. So what's the deal? Why did Joe Flacco look better than Watson? That being said, you look at all the injuries they had, and they still made the playoffs, so that's kind of why I was originally putting them in good. But yeah, for here, I think fine feels like the right place. A lot of negatives, because the Jaguars I can't put them in oh god, I'm saving that, but they're another bad, right? I mean, they started off looking great, but Lawrence, for the first half of the year, was like, oh, he's taken the next step. He is a great quarterback. The numbers aren't great, but that's more the scheme fault and the team fault, I should say. But then he got hurt, and I think didn't really. He was playing through injuries, I think, but didn't look great the second half of the year. Also, the Calvin Ridley thing did not work out the way we were hoping it would. Christian Kirk kind of regressed to Cardinals Christian Kirk. So, defense looked really good, and that's why you could argue maybe it should be fine, but I'm still going to put it in the bad tier. The Detroit Lions, I'm in between good and amazing. I think you got to go amazing, though, right? Like, all these young players stepping up and playing as well as they did, like, the fact that they've proven that they can get to a big game, and they nearly beat the 49ers. It's funny seeing all the Lions fans saying, oh, we would have beaten the Chiefs if we got there. I feel like there's always a dozen teams that would have won the Super Bowl if they got there, but hey, they might have. They beat the Chiefs in the regular season. They were right. They ended up beating the Super Bowl winner, and they nearly beat the team in the conference championship. Got to feel pretty great about that from where they were. So yeah, amazing feels right. The Vikings, I'm kind of leaning towards good as well, which I know seems weird because they didn't make the playoffs. But again, starting quarterback got hurt. Like, they had a great defense, which we thought would be a weakness, and so they feel better going into next year than they probably did, going into this. Well, they won 13 games the previous year, but I never really thought they were that good. This year, I actually feel like they were a more complete team, but then Cousins got hurt, and Jefferson was hurt for the first half of the year. So, getting everyone healthy, I think they should feel better about themselves now than they probably felt going into last year. So that's how I view that. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm also putting in the good category. It was a lot of fun. Definitely it was a fun season category. Now, I think you could argue that, like, is part of the issue with this, are you about to overpay Baker Mayfield? That could actually turn this into a bad season, even though it was a fun season. That's the question. But, not going to get a great draft pick or anything like that. But what winning does do is it makes it a lot easier to keep some of their key free agents around and sign those guys for long-term deals. So I would still say it's a good season. 49ers, you know what? I'm still going to put them in the amazing tier. I know it was a devastating loss, but listen, they lost in overtime in the Super Bowl. How can you not say, unless it's the Atlanta Falcons, who blew a 28-3 lead. Yeah, technically the 49ers were up 10 at one point, but it didn't feel like a blown lead. It felt like the Chiefs took a minute to get going and then did. They were a couple plays away from potentially winning the game. 49ers were. Chiefs were just the Chiefs. I mean, I'm still going to keep them in the amazing tier. The Atlanta Falcons. I'll put them into oh god tier. This was a tough season. Is that fair? Let's talk through it. So the defense looked a lot better. The Jesse Bates signing was awesome. So there definitely were positives, and I do think Drake London showed a lot of flashes despite the Arthur Smith of it all. But I still, they don't have a quarterback and aren't in great position to get one. Yes, they have pieces, but feels like they've gotten further away this season than they were heading into last season. That's just kind of how I view it. But new coach, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm being too hard. You could argue bad. The Ravens, I think I'm going to put them, so I'll put them in the good tier because, like, it was a great season. Lamar looked like, he won an MVP again. So, okay, you silenced all the doubters there. The receiving core did actually kind of unlock that missing piece in the Ravens offense. The defense was the best defense in football this season, but the playoffs, man, it's yet another playoff disappointment, and you can't not factor that in. So it's almost like I just think they can't get into the amazing tier unless they make a Super Bowl at this point. That's just kind of how I view it. The Chicago Bears, am I crazy for putting them in the amazing tier? Like, okay, hear me out. Obviously, this season wasn't great for the Bears, but they showed flashes. They also just, as of recording this video, which I believe I'm going to post it the day after, so I'm recording it yesterday when you're watching it, they just released a couple players, Whitehair and Eddie Jackson. But here's my logic. They got the first overall pick, and they still have another first-round pick, and it wasn't because they stunk and got the first overall pick. They were a decent team who's now going to get a potential, from what I understand, a potential generational quarterback. Like, yeah, that's an amazing season, even though it wasn't really because of what they did. It was just the trade they made. But, the results of this season were amazing for the future of the Bears. That's why they're there. The Dallas Cowboys were, I guess I'll say fine. It was fine. Yeah, they disappointed in the playoffs, but that's what they do. Like, we knew that was going to happen. And they're, they listen, say what you want about Trayvon Diggs. He is an all-pro, and they were without him for the whole season. So being able to still have a decent season that way, that's pretty impressive, to me. And the regular season, they were legitimately great. They just, they got to stop screwing up in the playoffs. Kind of that's how I view that. And then the Texans are another obviously amazing situation. And it's not just the CJ Stroud. Like, that was awesome too. But, like, the coaching thing seems to be working. Their defense took the next, like, every young player basically looked awesome. Will Anderson looked awesome. Nico Collins and Tank Dell looked awesome. Derek Stingley, who had a rough rookie year, looked great in year two. Like, everyone looked great. It looks like they have a really awesome rookie core that should be on rookie deals for the next few years. Like, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then the Colts, I'll say good. Like, they showed they were a playoff caliber team. They fell short of the postseason on the final game of the season. But, Anthony Richardson did look good in the small sample size. The injuries are a little bit concerning, but I would still say that this was a promising step in the right direction for Indianapolis. They seemed to be well coached. Yeah, the good tier feels right. Next up is the Los Angeles Rams. This was a good season for the Rams for sure, right? Like, it wasn't, I don't know if I can go any much further than that. They didn't win a playoff game or anything. But again, we were talking about them as a potential, bottom 5 team in football entering the year. The fact that they showed that they can still be a playoff team and nearly beat the Lions in that game. You could argue outplayed the Lions at times in that football game. The fact that they, weren't able to get much more going is why I can't put them in the amazing tier. But definitely a good year for them. Again, will help them acquire free agents and stuff like that. A lot of their young players did step it up. Not a lot of big names on that team, although they still have a couple, of course, but definitely a good season. Ramsey trade still doesn't look great, though. Maybe they need to add some secondary players, but we'll see what they do. Definitely moved in the right direction. So the Chargers are an interesting one because, like, in some ways it's oh god, right? With what they with what went wrong, but they almost went so poorly that like I'm gonna kind of they got Jim Harbaugh now. They have like a good draft pick. So is it because are they good? I think I'm gonna just put them in the fine tier because like the bad news is they fell that far. The good news is them falling that far kind of allows them to do a reset. So there's some positives in that as well. So I'm kind of just going to negate them and put them there. The Raiders, I think, so, I don't know. They're weird. It was a weird season for the Raiders, where we all thought their defense would stink, but their offense would be all right. Their defense was actually good, but their offense struggled at times. Still know how to get a quarterback. That's kind of the issue, and they paid Jimmy Garoppolo, which that's not a great idea. So at this, that was not a good contract. So they're definitely taking a step backwards there. They're going to try the Antonio Pierce thing. We'll see how it works out. I feel like they're kind of caught in no man's land, but I also feel like they were kind of caught in no man's land last year. So I'm just going to put them in the fine tier. That feels right for me. We'll see how it goes. The Washington football team, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, so you got the number 2 overall pick, and I guess that's the positive. So I'll put it in the bad and not oh god, just because again you can reset. But like the defense looked terrible. You're signing Dan Quinn, which like I still maintain I think the best thing Dan Quinn. I don't know if Dan Quinn's a good head coach or if he's a head coach who hired Kyle Shanahan once. It kind of feels like that's probably more likely. So because of that, I don't know. I don't get why they're doing that. The defense looked horrible. There are some nice weapons, but the offensive line has some issues as well. And we'll see what they do with the number 2 overall pick. Kansas City Chiefs, it was a good season, yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, feels like good is what they should be for Super Bowl with how often they're doing it. But no, of course, you win a Super Bowl, no question. It's amazing. The Saints, it was fine. I think fine feels fair for the New Orleans Saints, right? Like it wasn't great. It wasn't like this. It wasn't terrible either. They kind of, they were mediocre. We thought they'd be mediocre. Derek Carr looked terrible for the first, 2/3 of the season, but they'd turn it around and have a good final stretch. We'll see if that continues in the next season, but yeah, it was fine. The Giants here, it was oh god. It was oh god. It just was because they went out, they paid Daniel Jones all that money. Like, okay, here we go. Like, this is our guy, and it didn't work out. And I know that for the Daniel Jones contract, people bring up like, oh, it's not, we don't have to pay him for the whole 4 years. Still got to pay him $40 million this year, and you're still going to owe him $20 million the following year. That's a tough situation. They have a draft pick, but it's not they're picking first or second overall, so they still need a quarterback right here. It was a rough year. The Eagles, I'm going to put them in oh god. This was a disaster. I mean, they were the 1 seed for a while, but this is the team that we thought would be a championship contender. They ended up getting smoked by a surprise playoff team in Tampa Bay in round 1, a game I was at. It was a lot of fun for me. But for the Eagles, it was not a lot of fun. They didn't look like they wanted it. They weren't tackling at all in that game. Jalen Hurts does not look like a top 5 quarterback, whereas he looked like he was an MVP candidate just the year prior. Yeah, this is about as, it's not as bad of a situation as you can look at because they made the playoffs, but it's pretty close. The Steelers are perpetually fine. They're going to stay in the fine tier for the rest of their existence. That's just where they're at right now. The Denver Broncos here, this was not good. They got to figure out, the hope was that, hey, Sean Payton can unlock something in Russell Wilson, and it worked okay. He was better, but that's kind of it. The defense played better towards down the stretch, but did regress from last year. I think they're another oh god. This was not good. This is not what the Broncos wanted, and now they're in complete rebuild mode, whereas we thought they would be in a position to maybe make the playoffs perhaps. So had that win streak, maybe oh god's too harsh. I'll put them in bad. Bad feels fair. Packers are another amazing team. A lot of amazing teams, interestingly enough, but again, it's a quarterback-driven league, and if you can get a quarterback who has the ability to do what Jordan Love did, then that's an amazing season. And they had other young guys step it up as well. It wasn't just Jordan Love, although he obviously had a huge part in it. So yeah, amazing tier feels right. Panthers, obviously an oh god. I could maybe even make another tier below it for just the Carolina Panthers alone, but I won't do that. But yeah, it was a disaster. I mean, Bryce Young did not look good. He did not have help, so they didn't do a good job of that. And on top of it, they were the worst team in football, but don't even get that pick because they traded it to Chicago, and now apparently, people. I still have to do a deeper dive into Caleb Williams, which I will before too long. But people are saying that he could be like an elite generational talent that you're missing out on. You could have potentially, you missed out on Stroud because you drafted Young. Like Young has to play great, or this could be one of the all-time bad seasons. The Arizona Cardinals are here. I don't know, like it wasn't good, but like I wasn't expecting it to be good. So like, yeah, it's fine, I guess. Like this is what we were expecting. So I don't know. That's kind of just how I view that. The Bills. Now there was a point when the Bills were going to be in like the oh god tier, but they did good enough. They went on that win streak. They nearly beat Kansas City. They're kind of the one team that feels like they can, have a chance against. Like it's the one quarterback that feels like he, I guess Burrow. You obviously got to say he's the number one, but like Allen's the one guy who hasn't beaten Mahomes, but seemingly has gotten close a couple times. Obviously that missed field goal hurt. Although I don't know if they're winning anyway, given how Mahomes tends to do in 2-minute drill situations. But regardless, that was, still a good season. A step in the right direction for Buffalo, I think, but nothing too massive. The Seahawks are next, which is, I don't really know what to make of them. Their defense was definitely not good this season, and I think Geno Smith wasn't quite as good this year as he was last year. It wasn't a disaster, but they do feel a bit further away than they were the previous year, so I'm going to put them in bad. And then the Patriots, who, it was a disaster this year, obviously. They fired Bill Belichick, and they hired, Gerard Mayo. Jared or Gerard? I should know that. They hired Jared Mayo there, who, I don't know. For me personally, it kind of feels like if you're going to do that, just keep Bill Belichick. I guess my podcast co-host Kyle said that there was some sort of deal worked where he was, kind of grandfathered in to the job once Belichick left, which feels weird. And then, this was tough. They need a complete rebuild at this point. They do have the number 3 overall pick, so that's good, but this was still an oh god situation. So that is my tier list. That is my tiers. You see that relatively spread out throughout. But yeah, what are your thoughts on all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.